So you had said you were in the Army, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah. When was it?
I joined in 1969.
Okay.
The draft was still on. I got drafted after I flunked out of college and decided I didn't want to be an infantryman, which was likely, so I went ahead and joined and got more of a choice of, the kind of job it would have.
Yeah, so what job did you choose?
Well, they give you aptitude tests and a lot of stuff in basic training, and I ended up testing pretty well for languages, so they sent me to a language school, which was a branch specializing in Vietnamese. So I ended up being a Vietnamese linguist, basically translating documents.
Yeah. So were you stationed in the U.S. or did you actually go over to Vietnam?
No, I was in Vietnam for not quite a year, and then transferred to a base in Thailand, which was actually an Air Force base, but they had a small kind of listening post there, so I was attached to that.
So what were your specific duties that you did? You translated documents, but did you do any, you said listening post, is that?
Yeah, I was part of an organization in the Army called the Army Security Agency, which intercepted radio messages, basically.
Cool.
So I would, in our station in Vietnam and the one in Thailand too, we would get these intercepts on, transcribed on paper, and then we would try to. They were all encrypted, and sometimes they would be broken out. Sometimes the encryption method was only partially understood, so they would give it to us anyhow, and we would try to see if we could figure out, generally what they were saying. So that was it. My particular subunit in that was specialized in intercepts from North Vietnamese units going up and down the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos. So that was kind of it. It was an office job, and it required a high security clearance. So they didn't want us out running around. So basically, we were on this compound for the whole time. Didn't go out, didn't go anywhere. So it was, not like I was in any particular danger. I could have been, this desk here, basically any place, but it happened to be in kind of the northern part of what was then South Vietnam.
Okay, cool. So, I'm sure it was very was there kind of an adjustment period from when you went, moved from being a civilian, into the Army? What was that kind of like? I'm sure that would be jarring.
Yeah, all the services put you through some kind of, basic training they called in the Army boot camp, and the Navy, and whatever, and that's designed to force you into that transition to kind of break down your old bad habits as a civilian and get you used to, the discipline of military life, getting up at a certain time and obeying orders, and it was hard in a psychological sense, and of course there's the physical aspect of it too, but that was less of a problem. Mm-hmm. So you're with people you never met before, and some of them are okay, some of them not so much. And, but you get after some number of weeks, it was basic training at that time was 8 weeks. So after 4 or 5 weeks, why most guys were kind of accustomed to it, and I know I was, and a few never did, and so I know there were a small number who just couldn't adjust to military life and got discharged. So, but fortunately or unfortunately, I could make that transition, and it's mostly mental. You have to decide that this is where you are, this is how it's going to be, and just do what you need to do.
So then, was it hard once you came back to civilian life? Was that kind of an easier transition, or was it? Because I know for some people it can be very difficult afterwards, but I don't know.
Well, since I didn't experience a lot of traumatic episodes when I was in the service, I didn't have that kind of thing, but you're still, I went back to school, so I was older than most of my fellow students, and it was harder. It's hard to relate to people who haven't gone through something similar, and so I tended to hang out with other veterans for a long time. So I guess that's the main transition. It's relationships with students who, I don't know, anybody who hadn't been in the military were just harder for a couple years.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of there were incidents with veterans who did have much more trouble than I did, and but I didn't have trouble sleeping or didn't have flashbacks or that kind of thing. So it wasn't bad.
That's good. Yeah. So you went back to school then, and then is that when you decided you wanted to study history and go?
No, actually, I found out I was good at languages, so I went back and decided to study Chinese language, which is what I did. I had most of my basic distribution requirements out of the way, so I could progress pretty quickly, and so I got got an undergraduate degree in Chinese in a couple years, I guess, and then a master's. And then at that point, I kind of figured out I wouldn't really be happy teaching language, but I wanted to, invested a lot of time in Chinese and Japanese too. I took 4 years of Japanese, so I wanted to use those, and I had taken some history courses, and my master's thesis was really a history project, and so when my wife decided she was going to go to Princeton and do graduate work there, then I looked around for a history program close by, and so I ended up at Penn, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, did a PhD in history, and came here, and I've been here ever since.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess I can't ask you this. I was worried if you were in combat. I don't want to ask this question, but I guess, what did you think was the most important thing that you learned when you were in the Army? What did anything stick with you that you kind of still see yourself, doing or thinking about daily, or even?
I think the most important thing that I learned was self-discipline, which I really wasn't ready when I first started college for that experience. I wasn't really interested, but those were the days of the draft, and that was a way out of it. So, but the Army taught me to kind of buckle down and to, I had responsibility that I had to take care of, and so that was, really kind of growing up, you might say, was the most important aspect of that experience. And I had some sense that other people were kind of depending on me doing a good job, so which wasn't always, you're kind of removed from really the consequences or the implications of the work you're actually doing. So what is that, what does it mean for, let's say, units out in the field, in combat, to have that information, so some guys could never really get a sense that they were doing anything important, but I kind of felt, whatever your stance on the war, I kind of felt like there were people that this would be helpful, maybe even critical for. So that was something else that was good. That I needed to have a sense of responsibility, not only to myself, but to the kind of larger organization.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think going over there made you more patriotic, or how did that, I guess, affect your look on America in general? If it didn't, that's fine too.
I was never really anti-war, beforehand, and I guess it made me more. It didn't give me any sympathy for demonstrators or protesters. I understood that the government had not been honest in a lot of ways, and I understood that the way the war was conducted sometimes was wrong. I mean, there were things like My Lai that had happened not long before I went, a year or so before I went to Vietnam. So there were atrocities and so on, and there was a lot of there were a lot of problems in the Army. Race relations were very bad, and racial attitudes towards the Vietnamese, were bad also. But at the same time, there were, all of these guys who got, and some women, were over there too. There were nurses and so on. That went there and were doing their duty, and whatever kind of the mistakes that were made, why, so I guess I would have to say I became more patriotic, really, you'd have to say. I was, I was not reborn on the 4th of July or anything, but it just seemed to me to, there was a way to kind of change things, and that wasn't the way, most of my generation, who were protesting, were doing it. They were at Kansas, just after I joined the Army and went away for basic training. There was a big demonstration on campus, and demonstrators set fire to the student union, burned it down. So that just seemed pointless, as well as wrong. So I didn't have any sympathy for kind of that way of protesting the war and trying to change things. So.
Yeah. Does it affect your view on, the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, the Middle East in general now, or?
I'm probably less opposed to what we did than most people, I'm guessing. I understand that, again, there were a lot of mistakes, but I still think there's a certain case to be made, even for Iraq. So, so I'm kind of, on the conservative side of things that way.
Okay. So obviously this post is for Veterans Day. So how do you kind of feel about, being a veteran and then just Veterans Day in general? Because I know I've talked to vets who, kind of really hate Veterans Day. They don't, and Memorial Day more so than Veterans Day. But because it's become this whole, there's sales and all that stuff, and it kind of moves away from, thanking veterans for what they did. But, how do you, what's your those?
Well, that's sort of the culture for all holidays. They've become like that. So I don't particularly, I don't have any negative feelings about Veterans Day. Actually, I think it's probably more important now than it used to be, because the percentage of the population that have had military service in their background is steadily decreasing. The one good thing about the draft, I suppose, is that it provided a kind of common experience for lots of men, at least. That doesn't happen anymore. So all holidays have become commercialized, and to the extent that Veterans Day and Memorial Day are like that, that's regrettable. But I don't hate it. I didn't think much about being a veteran for a long time, but with the generation that was the one before mine, from World War II in Korea, all those guys, are passing away. So it's been kind of more in my consciousness, but it's not really that significant. I don't think. I don't resent not having Veterans Day off.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, Vietnam was, since I never saw anything of it, I don't have any particular experiences there, but in Thailand, we were a lot freer to go out and travel around. So I do have a lot of good memories there, from being more exposed to the people and the culture, and being able to travel to certain places. And I know at one point this base where I was close to the border with Laos, so we a couple of us rented a boat and had the guy take us across it was the Mekong River, actually, into Laos, which we weren't supposed to do. And we went to this temple, and so stuff like that was that kind of piqued my interest, in Asian culture and religion. So it probably influenced my decision to to go into Asian studies. And so I'm, now I teach a survey course in East Asian history, and I like that a lot because, I kind of got a sense of the complexity of things, and different, how different certain people's beliefs are, and the culture of Asian countries was fascinated me. So that was a positive aspect, probably, of being in Southeast Asia.